Hello everyone and welcome to this video which is in our Great Engine Middlegame series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at an interesting middle game between Stockfish and rofChade in the TCEC Season 22 Division P. This position arose after the 19th move. A quick intuitive glance gives you the idea that white's a little bit better. Pawn on d5 gives a nice space advantage, and these queenside pawns d5, c4, b3, a2 block out the dark squared bishop on b7. So that just means that one of black's pieces is rather passive. Looking just a little bit further, you realise that actually the active chances of both sides, there's a marked disparity there. White is going to do something on the queen side, and there's already a pressure point on there, these pawns b5, c4. So the likelihood that white can exploit that to create more entry channels, that's pretty high. So basically white's already started on the counterplay. If you look at black's normal play in this position would be to play f5 to f4. But the pieces are not well placed for that. The knight on f6 is in the way, the rook on e8 has been developed there, but it would rather be on f8, just supporting f5 to f4. So basically what we're saying is that white's got some nice tactical advantages, and also dynamically in terms of future play, white's got a clear lead. And well, you know, I mean, 3 or 4 years ago I would have upgraded my initial assessment of white's a little better to maybe, you know, slightly to clearly better. Seeing how strong engines are nowadays against opponents that don't have any good chances of counterplay, I'd probably upgrade this then to clearly better to completely winning. Yeah, feels weird, but that's really the only conclusion that you can take when you see how well the engines play this position as white. However, you know, assessment is one thing. You also need to find some plans. How is white going to concretely going to do something on the queen side? Well, I mean, there's two ideas. I mean, one idea is to play c4 to c5. This move is probably more likely to occur when black's shuffling its pieces around. For example, moving the bishop to c8 to try and activate it somehow on the c8 to h3 diagonal. But this c5, it's more opportunistic. Depends on how black places its pieces. Probably the main idea that white has is the move a4, just increasing the attack on this pressure point, and well, I mean, after that you should be able to find some sort of way to create some entry channels on the queen side. So pretty clear for white, really. For black, well, we're going to have to see. I mean, a move like, you know, knight h5 to allow f5 is I guess the first thing that occurs to me. If you can play that, maybe you can get your counterplay going reasonably quickly. But, you know, does it work? Well, that's something that you're going to have to calculate concretely. Now, if you're looking at white plans, you know, what did Stockfish actually do in this position? Well, in the game, it just played the move a4, you know, and it just went straight for its queenside counterplay, which is fair enough. It worked beautifully in the game. One thing I do have to say is that in my engine matches against Berserk, Stockfish, just running on 14 threads, so much weaker than at the TCC, was playing this move g4, which was also interesting. It actually, it's really aiming to clamp down on black's kingside play, and actually it goes a bit further than that, because Stockfish was playing this idea. So what is white doing here? I mean, white's clamped down on the kingside counterplay with f5, and well, it's managed to secure this wonderful square for the knight on e4 by giving black the bishop pair, swapping off its dark square bishop for the knight, and spent a couple of tempi on that. Yeah, I'm always a little bit nervous about these sort of plans, because, you know, normally what I find is that the positional goal that you've achieved, you know, the static goal, somehow the benefits always seem to be just a little bit less than you'd assumed, and also the dynamic potential that you concede. You know, you spent a few moves achieving this this exchange, and that gives, you know, the opponent time to develop counterplay. Always find that that those dynamic gains always seem to make the realization of my advantages much more difficult than I expected. However, there is an important point to this position, and that's with this knight invulnerable on e4, the c5 break is very, very dangerous. It's a constant threat. So actually, black doesn't really have a great deal of freedom to dedicate to getting its pieces active. And that means that that white has quite a lot of time and quite a lot of spare material to actually organise an attack there. And just have a quick look at how it went. Rook c8, rook c1, bishop b7, rook ed1, and c5's already threatened now. I mean, if you do something like a4, for example, I go c5 and d6, bishop takes e4, I just take back, check, and bishop f5, winning the exchange and completely winning. So black plays rook ed8 to stop c5, and then queen c3. And again, if you go a4, then c5 is coming in, and d6, really, really dangerous. Bishop f8 allows knight takes c5. This is the key idea. So yeah, black ended up playing b takes c4, b takes c4, queen a4, just trying to to attack the pawn on c4. But white comfortably defends it with bishop f1 and then moves over to the b file. And yeah, Stockfish was winning these quite comfortably. So very interesting plan, and yeah, I mean, definitely worthy of attention. Actually, a4 that was Leela's main move, giving it 69%. But g4 was Leela's second move, and it gave it 66% expected score. So yeah, pretty both pretty good approaches. So after a4, here black played h5, and yeah, this is really an indication of the fact that black's got serious problems getting the kingside play going. I mean, knight h5 was what I really wanted, but knight e4 is an extremely strong reply. If you go f5, I go knight g5, and I'm coming into to e6. And if you go h6 to stop knight g5, I just go queen e2, and g6 allows queen takes h5, g takes h5, knight f6 check. So yeah, I mean, actually there's no easy way for black to get counterplay with f5 going. So h5 is, well, sort of a roundabout way of doing it. Black's getting a foothold on the king side. You might get an h4 later, but you've also got the idea of going something like knight h7 and f5, for example. It's basically whatever you can achieve. And so here white has to, black's obviously going to take quite a lot of time to get the kingside attack going. So white has to now think, how are we going to get things going on the queen side? And I was definitely surprised by what Stockfish did, but it was a lovely plan. Stockfish played a5, which I thought first of all was just a static measure, just to really box in the light squared bishop on the queen side. It looks just like a static good positional move. Turned out to be a lot more than that, because after rook b8, queen d3, bishop c8, white played bishop b6, and this is a really good concept. So what is the idea? Well, actually the bishop is shielding the defense of the rook on the b pawn. So actually we're threatening c takes b5, and well, either you go queen takes b5 or you go a takes b5 immediately. But this is going to give white a huge passed a pawn. So what also does white get? Well, after playing c takes b5, we get the open c file, and of course the bishop on b6 is providing a lovely invasion square for the rook. And finally, because this bishop is actually nastily restricting these two pieces, for example, a rook can't get to d8, that means that c4 to c5 is a much more dangerous threat again depending what black does, but that's definitely increasing that threat. So bishop b6, a really lovely concept, and this really puts black into trouble. So Rothschilder decided it didn't want to wait for c takes b5, it played b takes c4. But now after b takes c4, well, white's got an entry channel now already. Black's barely started the kingside play, and white's already got the b file. So queen e7 was played by Rothschilder, actually looking to play maybe knight d7 at some stage to c5, just challenge that bishop. Now, quite interesting little shuffle here. Rook c1 was played by Stockfish. I mean, in my games Berserk against Stockfish, Berserk played the move knight b3, queen b7, rook c1, bishop d7, c5, which also looked incredibly dangerous. Although, obviously, of course, Stockfish managed to survive with some ridiculous tactics. But this was also very sensible. But rook c1, knight d7, and then rook b1 was Stockfish's shuffle there. Yeah, I mean, now that all these pieces are bunched up on the queen side, white just protects the bishop on b6. So g6 played, and now another lovely move, and this was the move queen e3. I mean, g6 was slightly sneaky. It was looking maybe for ideas like knight b6 and then bishop f5 with some sort of, skewer along the h7b1 diagonal. So queen e3 sidesteps that. It also reinforces the bishop on b6, and also stops the bishop from coming to h6. And also, bearing in mind that black might want to play f5, it's keeping an eye on this g5 square. You might want to put a knight onto g5 eventually. So it's a lovely sort of creeping move, sort of move that Petrosian always played. So knight takes b6 was played. So sorry, I'm sort of going way ahead there. Yeah, f5 was played in a number of games between Stockfish and Berserk. Actually, both times with both colours. Berserk and Stockfish were winning this with white. Bishop g7, knight g5 is a nice illustration of the value of that queen e3 move. And after e4, c5, you really see that the queen is absolutely connected with all the important points in the position. So knight c5 takes, d takes c5, rook b6. We're hitting across here now. Bishop f6, h4. d6 and bishop f1, we're hitting a6, we're coming into c4, threats against the king, queen b3 also. Beautiful play really, and this was Stockfish beating Berserk there. But Berserk also beat Stockfish in a number of these games. It just seems to be really, yeah, I think it's seems to be lost for black completely by now. Knight b6 was played. Rook takes b6. And now bishop f5 was played by rofChade. It's actually the favoured move of all my engines. If you take on b6, I go a takes b6, king g7, and now we've got various options. Berserk was always very keen on playing its knight round to a5, which works pretty well. Certainly, black is completely tied down in that position. Stockfish was playing a little bit differently. It was playing rook b1 and then knight e4. When eventually c5 is going to come in. Again, incredibly dangerous for black. So bishop f5 was played, just with the idea actually of giving up the a pawn and getting some counterplay. And actually, just for a moment, it doesn't look too bad. It looks, well, okay, black's lost a pawn, but he's going to tie white down to this a pawn. Got the two bishops. Who knows? Maybe something could happen. But this was really gorgeous from Stockfish, c5. And it's so typical of engines. This is really something that human players really need to learn. Just this being so careless of extra material and always seeing those transformations. So transforming this slightly weakly extra pawn into a huge static plus, which is a massive pass c pawn. And actually, this just seems to be completely lost for black. There doesn't actually seem to be a way to stop the c pawn in the long run. Queen a7 was played, takes. Bishop e4, which is a very nice move. Just giving up the h3 pawn is maybe not even necessary actually. Maybe you could even just play h4 and then follow up with bishop e4 later. But this is by far the sharpest. You give up the h3 pawn, but you come in with rook b1, and now we're looking for stuff like rook b7, for example. King g7, knight c4, bishop g4, knight b6. A very nice move. We're going to look for rook c1 to play c7. And, well, if you go rook c7, I'll even be able to chase it away with knight a8, maybe. So bishop e2 played, rook e1, bishop b5, and now rook c1, king h7. And, we could play moves like c7, but actually Stockfish was aiming for even more. So when bishop g2, just trying to get rid of this light squared bishop, remove a defender of c8, and just enable you to come just to power away all the way through to queen. So bishop d3, bishop f1, bishop f5, c7, actually another key idea for white here is to play king h2 and bishop h3 then, just to swap that one off. But the game continued here, takes, bishop d3, rook c7, takes there, and well, black resigned soon afterwards. Yeah, I thought this was a very interesting middle game. I mean, in particular, I thought the judgment of this position was quite interesting. The various thoughts you can have, but this particular measure, A5, which I didn't really understand it at all. But then together with this concept of bishop b6, a really nice way of exploiting this type of structure that comes up quite a bit in Najdorf Sicilians or any type of Sicilians actually. So quite typical. And yeah, then I like the finish of it very much. In particular, yeah, these are always very nice. Simply transformations of advantage, giving up one advantage in order to gain another, and giving up the A pawn. So giving up material just in order to get such a strong pass C pawn was really, really nice. So yeah, great play again from Stockfish, as you'd expect. And well, so far looks like it's going to be Stockfish against Komodo Dragon in the super final, unless Leela has an unexpected twist in store for us. But yeah, certainly Stockfish looking extremely strong there.